Have you ever had a brilliant idea in a meeting, but stayed silent because you were intimidated by the most senior person in the room? I know that feeling intimately, and today I'm sharing how to reframe that fear so you can speak with confidence and give voice to your ideas. Welcome to Daring Breakthroughs, the show that helps ambitious professionals build unstoppable confidence, get crystal clarity, and create powerful connections that fuel your next career move. I'm Jenn Landis, author of Break Up, Break In, Break Through. I navigated my own career from Walmart to Wall Street, and I'm here to show you how to rise with strategy and not burn out. Early in my career, I met an executive named Frank. Frank ruled by fear. He seemed to almost enjoy intimidating others. I don't know if it was something he was aware of, if it's something he employed purposefully, or if it was just his standard MO. But whatever it was, people feared Frank, and I was no exception. In fact, I was often used by my boss at the time, who was also afraid of Frank, as a go-between. So I'd have to deal with Frank so he didn't have to. I would literally duck into empty rooms when I saw him coming down the hallway just to avoid him. For some reason, Frank would pick apart everything I said. He would be critical. He would interrupt me before I'd even finished my statement with a criticism or something that he found, I don't know, just not to his liking. I got the scoffs. I got the sneers. I got all the things, the awkward tone and the thing that made me feel like he was thinking to himself, "You're a complete idiot." Whatever it was, that was Frank. And I hated working with him. But I had a big presentation that I really needed the senior executive team to approve, and Frank was part of that. And so I knew I was going to have to go into this meeting and get Frank, if not on my side, I at least couldn't let him and his behavior derail what I was trying to do. And I knew he'd try to tear it apart. To be honest, my fear was pretty paralyzing. I practiced, I lost sleep, I wrestled and wrestled and wrestled with this until I finally was able to empty myself of emotion and step back and realize that Frank's attacks, and that's what they felt like to me, weren't personal. In fact, Frank really didn't care about me. It wasn't about me at all. It was about him, his own political battles with other people in the room, and the realization that I was simply a tool that Frank was using to further his own agenda. And when I realized that, it gave me just enough space to stop reacting with fear and start thinking strategically. That is what we're going to talk about today, because speaking to executives isn't about being fearless. It's about having a formula. So here are 3 things I learned by dealing with Frank and how I hope you can apply them to deal with your version of Frank, whatever that might be. Step 1, overprepare your content. Now, some of you are going to say, wait a minute, Jen, wait a minute. You've said other things that lead me to believe that we shouldn't be over-preparing. And you're right. But in this instance, dealing with a Frank, I really do want you to over-prepare because I want you to be able to work on autopilot. Because as you're dealing with Frank, if you are distracted by other things, worried about what you're going to say next, worried about how you're going to open up whatever it is you're going to talk about, your attention is going to be fractured and your focus is going to be lost. It's in those situations that the things that Frank may throw at you can really knock you off your game. I want you to be rock solid on your content so that your entire emotional energy and your thought energy can actually go toward ducking and weaving and bobbing and dealing with Frank with poise, purpose, and intention. So I want you to over prepare your content because I want you to be able to give your presentation without consciously thinking about it. All right. Now, once you've done that and you've done your work before the meeting, let's move on to step 2. I want you to reframe the threat. So in the story I related, Frank was the threat in my mind, at least in the beginning. It was also a substitute for the real fear that I was feeling threatened by. I really wasn't afraid that I was going to lose my job as a result of dealing with Frank. I was more afraid that I'd let my emotions control me, that I would say something that I later regretted because it either embarrassed me or that I didn't show up as the expert that I was in what I was doing because I allowed myself to get rattled. I was really more afraid of being embarrassed and having regrets based on the interaction than I was about any true threat of losing my job. So I really needed to reframe the threat. The threat was not Frank. The threat was me and my inability to handle Frank. So I created a visualization, and I'm sure you've heard this in the past. Picture everyone in the audience in their pajamas, for instance, just to remind you that people are just that, people. They put on their pants one leg at a time. Well, the visualization that I created needed to be a little bit more ridiculous than that. So I imagined Frank in a ridiculous red sequined suit because I knew Frank would never wear something like that. He was very straight-laced. He was black suit every day with a tie, like he wore the same thing every day. So imagining him in a ridiculous red sequined suit, I just knew that was not something that he would ever wear. So I figured out a way in my mind to just, as soon as I walked in, I pictured him in that suit, and it broke the tension in my mind, and it let me feel my shoulders drop, and it deflected the intensity with which I viewed Frank. And it gave me, again, some space that allowed me to listen to his comments as they just passed by me instead of absorbing them. And it really lightened my load. And that led me to step 3. Answer the question, not the tone. I mentioned before that Frank's tone was aggressive, it was dismissive, it was snide, but his questions were just questions. And I knew my subject matter. So the questions themselves shouldn't have been anything that threw me from my game. Because remember, in step 1, I overprepared. So as I focused on responding to the substance of his question with poise, demonstrating grace under pressure, it enabled me to mentally bob and weave and disregard his tone and just look at the core content of his question. And something really funny happened as a result of that. All of the other executives in the room took a cue from the way I responded to Frank. They were worried that I was going to be emotional in my response to Frank. Because guess what? I had been emotional in my response to Frank in previous meetings. And so the fact that I was not reacting in that way to Frank meant that everybody else could relax, and they took note of something that I didn't understand at the time, and I didn't appreciate at the time until after the meeting. And that's because after the meeting, many of the executives came up to me and congratulated me in the way that I managed Frank, the way that I managed the meeting, the way that I showed up and demonstrated my expertise. The thing that I was going after, the approval that I was seeking, I got. My project was approved, and I actually gained some new fans from the executive team because of the way I was able to deal with Frank. So you never know the positive attention that you'll get when you show up differently, particularly in respect to your Frank. So in the end, I'm actually really grateful to Frank, because had Frank not been such an extreme example of a difficult personality, I'm not sure I would have learned this lesson early in my career the way I did. And let me tell you how this ended up showing up later on in my career. After I had left the organization in which Frank was a senior leader, I went back to a company that I had been employed with previously. And I had a version of Frank in that organization too. He had a different name. We'll call him Tom. Tom was completely, totally, 100% intimidating to me. He was smart. He was direct. He was a bit ruthless. And once again, everyone was afraid of him. And when I went back into that company, I had an opportunity in the first week of my employment. I had to present to that group, one of which was Tom. And instead of waiting for the presentation to start, as soon as I entered the room, I saw Tom, and I made a decision that I was not going to let Tom become a Frank for me. So I strode through that room with absolute purpose and a laser focus. I walked right up to Tom. I stuck out my hand and said, "Tom, it is so good to see you." Tom was taken aback because Tom knew that the last time he had interacted with me, I had come across as mousy and scared and timid. This time, I was none of those things. I was assured, I was poised, I was self-confident. He took my hand and actually gripped it in both of his and said, "Jenn, it is such a delight to see you. Welcome back to the company. Why don't you come sit next to me?" That interaction completely changed my relationship with Tom. I actually became someone that Tom went to when he needed things. Tom actually respected me and respected the guts that it took for me to approach him in that manner. And he actually became a sponsor. So once again, when you can learn how to deal with your Franks, you never know the consequences, but odds are really good that they're going to benefit you. So before your next high stakes meeting, write down the single hardest question you could be asked. Then prepare a calm, confident, 3-ish sentence answer, making sure that you are fully prepared. And then imagine your biggest naysayer in the room, what they might say to you, and how you'll respond. If you need to, come up with some ridiculous visualization like I did. Practice it with a good friend. And then I'd love if you'd let me know how that interaction goes. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Daring Breakthroughs. If you found value, like and subscribe, and check the description for some free tools and resources. Let's stay connected. You can find me everywhere at Ask Jenn Landis. That's Jenn with 2 N's. And if you need a speaker for your next event or want to work with me as your coach, I'd love to connect with you. Just visit jennlandis.com. That's JENNLANDIS.com. Until next time, share an insight you gained today with a friend and make one bold move. I dare you.